Hi there, and welcome back to the HQ. Today, we are going to be watching There Will Never Ever Be Another Show Like Monday Night Raw by Implement. If you don't know, I'm a bit of a wrestling buff. I've been watching wrestling off and on since I was a little kid. Like, all the way back in, late Attitude Era, early Ruthless Aggression era of WWE. And also, some modern stuff, and also some AEW. Now, I'm pretty sure this video predates AEW. Maybe? Yeah, I'm pretty sure, because this video is 7 years old. And I don't even think AEW is 7 years old. Let's see, when this video came out on January 14th, 2019. When did AEW first show up? AEW debuted. It showed up January 1st, 2019. So it was barely new, okay? Oh, it was same week, in fact. So, yeah. So let's just jump right into this and see what this has to say about Monday Night Raw.
In the first episode of Never Ever, I talked about the appeal of SpongeBob. I like SpongeBob, and it's not difficult to explain.
I'm just watching these episodes in reverse, I guess.
Everybody likes SpongeBob. Professional wrestling is a bit of a different story. When I say names like Ric Flair, Randy Savage, Hulk Hogan, and Andre the Giant, most of you can probably picture a vague figure in your heads, but you can't specifically tell who I'm talking about.
I can. I know who each and every one of those are.
Why is this? Well, the answer is professional wrestling is one of the most popular and unpopular forms of entertainment on Earth.
I could probably tell you who most of those wrestlers are too, if not for the fact that there's heavy editing in order to blow out WWE's copyright goons, I guess.
Trying to justify to people why I enjoy watching professional wrestling is like trying to justify why manatees haven't gone extinct. On the surface,
manatees are just big
awkward,
old
and
fellas.
Makes you wonder how something like it could even exist, and more importantly, how it continues to exist. Now, I'll admit, the idea of watching half-naked, oily, buff dudes pretending to beat each other up doesn't exactly sound like the most entertaining thing in the world.
Yeah, I mean, for some. But then, of course, it all just depends on what kind of wrestling you watch, whether it's the grappling or the fast-paced spot fests or the high-flying stuff. I don't know if he'll get into that, but it's there's all kinds of wrestling for all kinds of people.
But that's kind of what makes it so amazing.
Yeah?
Because despite its weird premise and clumsy appearance, professional wrestling fosters the capacity for emotional storytelling that can compel an arena of stoic adults to jump out of their seats and scream like little kids.
Sunset flip!
Don't
Absolutely.
believe me? Well, then you probably haven't watched an episode of Monday Night Raw.
Oh, yeah. God, that brings me back, dog. Sitting with my dad, just, on a Monday night, just watching Raw.
But, Amp, a lot of you are probably thinking, professional wrestling isn't real. You must be too dumb to realize that. I am smarter than you because I know that professional wrestling is fake. Oh man, you got me. Professional wrestling is not, in fact, a real athletic competition. There's no getting around that. Guess I have to end the video here because pro wrestling...
Oh, that is my favorite, fucked up bump. That's my, favorite, botch bump right there. It is so funny. It's overselling, under and overselling at the same time is so funny.
Wrestling isn't real.
It's still real to me, damn it!
It's
But
real.
neither Star Wars, or the Avengers, or Goku, or Homer Simpson, or any character in Super Smash Bros.
Yeah, Goku isn't real. He can't hurt you. I promise. I didn't say that. Okay. Thank you for not breaking me, Goku.
None of these things are real. However, it doesn't stop people from talking about them far more than they do a lot of real things. And in order to truly appreciate the rhetorical value of pro wrestling, you must treat it as it really is, a work of fiction.
Absolutely.
And not just any fiction.
Yeah.
Pro wrestling is one of the last remaining bastions of theater.
Oh yeah. Wrestling is just like a performance art. It's basically like telling a story through the art of physical combat. It is like, if you know what you're doing and you know how to tell a good story, it's amazing. Perfect example. I'm sure he'll talk about it because who can't talk about this match whenever you're talking about WWE, but like Ric Flair versus Shawn Michaels in Ric Flair's should have been his retirement match. It was phenomenal.
Now, like a lot of you, I went to public school, where many of you can probably remember multiple times in English class when you had to learn about this guy called Bill Shakespeare, considered by many scholars to be the greatest playwright of all time. And for so many years, I didn't get the appeal. I don't think anyone else did either. The only types of people in school who actually seemed to care about Shakespeare were the future MIT grad who memorized every piece of trivia ever, or the kid who was way too into theater. I never realized the value of Shakespeare until I discovered the treasure trove of old pro wrestling clips on YouTube.
And after we take Lex Luger in the job, we want the gold. We coming for you,
Okay, this is epic.
And only then did I realize why people love Shakespeare.
Oh my god.
Reading Shakespeare in 7th grade English is so boring because the content is not meant to be consumed through words on paper. Shakespearean plays flourished during a time before the majority of people knew how to read. Playwrights and actors had to craft compelling narrative performances using the limited tools they had. If you boil it down, the genre of theater mostly involves a bunch of weird people in stupid costumes prancing around and over-embellishing in iambic pentameter.
As someone who spent 4 years in theater class in high school, yeah, I get it. I was in both theater, I was both in theater and tech theater and advanced theater and advanced tech theater. So trust me, I was in all 4 like variance classes that I could be in theater. Also cracking a can. Got my root beer on. But yeah, all in all, like as a theater kid growing up, and also yeah, I can understand hating having to read Shakespeare because Shakespeare is not meant to be read, just like read like a book. It is meant to be performed. Unless it is rewritten and fundamentally changed to be a literary piece and not a performance art, you can't simply just read Shakespeare.
Theatrical entertainment doesn't come from what's literally happening on stage. The value of theater comes from filling in the blanks using our imagination.
Yeah.
This fundamental principle is otherwise known as the suspension of disbelief. It's why when you see this image, your brain doesn't automatically interpret it as some guy called Mark Hamill holding a blue stick. When you see this image, you see Luke Skywalker holding a lightsaber, neither of which are actually real.
Yeah.
Suspension of disbelief allows us to accept beyond what's literally happening on screen. It allows us to experience a story and its characters as real, no matter how simple the presentation. This same principle applies to novels, comic books, musical lyrics, cartoons, movies, and yes, professional wrestling. Visual storytelling is an inherently
Oh my
human
god,
art
that
form,
poster.
and people have been performing stories for audiences for thousands of years, dating all the way back to the earliest known auditoriums of ancient Greece, where citizens would gather around and listen to an esteemed orator recite the works of Homer.
I'm so angry I could spit flames out of my butt.
Homer Simpson versus Lisa Simpson.
Oh my god.
It should go
Oh
without
my
saying that
god,
the
this fucking game.
1990s in America were very different from 6th century BC Greece. 3,000 years ago, people really didn't have that much stuff to drown out the entertainment value of a guy standing on a platform and just talking to the audience. The 1990s was the birth of a new era of screens. Television,
Yeah.
video games, huge blockbuster movies, even the beginning of the World Wide Web. The new millennium was rapidly approaching, and
The 90s were a nutty time, dog. I was only alive for a few years during the 90s, but oh my goodness. Like, all I remember of the 90s is sitting down in my basement with my brother, playing on his Sega Genesis, and just playing like Sonic 1 and Golden Axe and Vector Man on his Sega Genesis. That was like my time. Because it's like, granted, I was born in 95, so I was just a little baby ratty at the time, so I didn't really have a whole lot of time in the 90s myself to experience it, but I still have a vivid enough memory, you know? Also, hey, Gray Cat. Hey, Gray. Nice to see ya. But yeah, like, the 90s is just kind of like that quintessential special time that's really kind of hard to truly pin down in the perfect sense.
everyone was preparing for the futuristic, technocratic, utopian future of the 2000s by surrounding themselves with the newest, coolest gadgets of the age. You'd
Yeah.
expect that all these new entertainment sources wouldn't leave much room for little old theater, and you'd probably be right if it weren't for professional wrestling. From about 1996 to 2001, professional wrestling became one of the most inescapable cornerstones of American entertainment.
God, right? The top 10. Like, it was in the top 15 shows. You got WWF Wrestling, WWF, WWF, WCW, WCW, WCW. The only thing that can breach it is the Winston Cup and a bunch of Rugrats and Larry King. God damn, Rugrats were everywhere. Dog, Rugrats were my shit when I was growing up.
And in order to understand why, we must first talk about a guy by the name of Vince McMahon.
Awful human, like, excellent wrestling promoter, awful human being. Absolute dog shit human being.
Vince McMahon started out with nothing. He was trapped in a dirt poor household with an abusive stepfather. Today he's worth about $3.5 billion, which is a little bit more than Donald Trump. It should be noted that this disparity hasn't prevented the two from being friends, which is
Yeah.
the primary reason why Vince's wife Linda is currently in the executive cabinet of the United States. Perhaps Vince and Donald are such good friends because they have so much in common. The two billionaires were born just 10 months apart. Both got rich not through a groundbreaking invention, but through ruthless business acumen. Both of them started a rival football league to the NFL that ultimately
Oh my god, I forgot about the time that Donald Trump started his own fucking football league. Oh my god. I mean, I knew the XFL happened and it was a bomb, but the USFL? Why is it? God damn.
failed, and both of them built empires by transforming businesses that they inherited from their fathers. In Vince
Oh my
McMahon's
goodness.
case,
God, why is Donald Trump's dad such like a gormless creature? What the fuck? What did he just get like hit like every branch on the way down?
he reunited with his father, Vince McMahon, Sr., at the age of 12. Vince Sr. owned the Worldwide Wrestling Federation, and Vince took a managerial position at the company.
Perhaps the most phenomenal athlete of all time, standing to my right, the one and only Andre the Giant heads up one-on-one.
By
Yeah.
the mid-1980s, Vince Sr. had passed away and Vince McMahon was now in charge of a booming wrestling empire.
I wonder if he's gonna get into the fact that his dad sold the company to Vince Jr. on the express condition that he does not encroach on other wrestling territories. and then he went and did it anyway.
Over the past decade, McMahon had completely overhauled the territorial system of the pro wrestling industry and transformed the WWF into a nationally recognized brand. In the 80s, the WWF experienced their first great boom period. Vince's ambitious business ventures like WrestleMania brought professional wrestling into the American pay-per-view market and transformed stars like Hulk Hogan into
The Aurora
national
Borealis.
icons. The WWF's
Yeah,
huge
hopefully
success
it's
in the
okay
late
now.
80s quickly began to recede in the early 90s, however. This was due to a multitude of reasons, ranging from a waning audience, Hulk Hogan departing for Hollywood, and a massive steroid controversy that almost sent Vince to prison.
Oh yeah, the steroid scandal almost like killed professional wrestling in the early 90s. Like if Vince was found guilty of like the steroid shit, it would have ruined him and wrestling. Like completely. Whew. Yeah, Mr. T was involved in some wrestling. No, Mr. T is an actor, and he got involved in wrestling just because of like a promotional stunt in the first WrestleMania.
Coupled with other failed experiments such as the World Bodybuilding Federation, it's safe to say that
Oh
by
my God, the
1993,
World
Vince
Bodybuilding
was
Federation.
in dire need of a new enterprise. It was at this time when Vince decided to transition the WWF into a staple of cable television through the debut of Monday Night Raw.
Yep. Now, for a little bit of context, Monday Night Raw is not the first WWE show to air. It's not the first WWE show to air. There was plenty of like WWF shows that aired before Monday Night Raw, but they were less of an actual like weekly like serialized show and more just like little snippets of promos and like lower card matches, but were mostly meant to air in like a localized area and promote like local events basically. They were meant the TV shows were originally just meant to be the advertisement for the live event. But then eventually the TV show used to like be like kind of overshadowed the actual live attendance of the show itself.
Ever since the popularization of the television in American society, professional wrestling has always had its place on TV, but never to the extent of what Monday Night Raw sought to accomplish. Prior to Raw, the primary role of wrestling on TV was to stimulate interest for live shows or pay-per-views. Wrestling programming at this time was supplemental.
Okay, so it's just explaining exactly what I explained right now.
And mostly involved recapping old events or promoting new ones. You would hardly ever see any high-profile or interesting wrestling matches televised during this time, as the intrigue was reserved for more important events. Monday Night Raw changed all of that
pretty
by
much.
broadcasting new matches and progressing the story every Monday night on the USA Network. Before Raw, pro wrestling was limited in its storytelling capabilities, as most of the time the audience would only be aware of the narrative and characters through a handful of pay-per-view events each year. Raw greatly expanded the capacity for storytelling in the WWF, as the audience could now tune into new developments on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
The foundation had been set for one
Yeah, like a weekly televised wrestling show changed the game for wrestling entirety.
of the most innovative and unique television programs in the world, but it would take an entirely separate force to truly take Raw to the next level. Today, the WWF is now the WWE, and it's the only major wrestling promotion in America. In the 90s, however, there was another.
It's kind of funny to think about that now. The fact that this video came out literally like 3 days, like within a week of within a week of AEW's first show, All In, it's really funny to think about, because now it's like right after this, there's immediately invalidated because now you have a billionaire family starting another wrestling promotion to go directly head to head with WWF, well, WWE. But you know, back then there was WCW.
WCW was a wrestling promotion largely based in the South, and by the 1990s, it was the only major wrestling promotion in America that Vince had failed to conquer. The company was largely helped by the endorsement of media mogul Ted Turner, a longtime wrestling fan who supported WCW by airing its programming on the Turner family of networks. In the early 90s, WCW quickly became a popular alternative to the WWF, due in large part to signing some of the WWF's older and more established talent. In 1990,
Yeah, that right there, like that right there is what really pushed WCW to the top. It's the fact that they had all the old guys that everybody recognized and wanted to see, which forced WWF to improvise and build up new guys who could actually, you know, take spots, you know, at the top. So, kind of shooting themselves in the foot in the long term there for a short term gain.
a Turner Network executive by the name of Eric Bischoff decided the time
Eric
was right
Bischoff.
to challenge the WWF's throne as the #1 wrestling company in America. On September 4th, 1995, WCW would launch Monday Nitro, their own weekly block of wrestling entertainment on TNT. Nitro would go on to compete head-to-head with Raw, occupying the same primetime time slot. And starting in 1996, Nitro would overtake Raw in television viewership, beginning an 84-week-long streak of WCW dominance. In the midst of Nitro...
Like, I don't know if he's going to get into it, but like, the first episode of Monday Nitro was such a shot across the bow with how it was handled. Because at the time, Lex Luger was wrestling for the WWF, right? And at the time, he wasn't under contract because there was this belief like that eventually Vince McMahon would get around to offering a contract that's worth the money to him. But it never happened. Instead, he just kept working without a contract, just going like week by week and getting paid for each appearance. So when Eric Bischoff, and he was unsatisfied with his booking as well, I should add. So when Eric Bischoff was going to start Monday Nitro, Lex Luger basically called up Eric and was like, "Hey, I want to come back to WCW." And Eric lowballed him. He lowballed him for a contract offer because they had some bad blood. But because Lex was so fed up with WWF and how they were treating him, he was like, "Sure, yeah, okay, I'll take it." And that even surprised Eric Bischoff. And what they did next was the biggest shot across the bow. Because the thing about Raw and Nitro at the time, Raw was pre-taped. Nitro was live. Monday Night Raw was not live at the time. It was taped. It was taped beforehand. So when Lex Luger appeared on a taped episode of Raw, only to appear later in a live episode of WCW Nitro the same day, that was a massive hit. That was like a shot fired at the WWF.
Prolonged period of success over Raw. Vince McMahon knew that his company was now in jeopardy. More and more of the WWF's high-end talent were jumping ship to WCW, leaving Raw stuck with a cast of unpopular and unproven faces. So when faced with such stiff competition, Vince did what any other monarch would do when his empire is threatened: go to war.
Yep.
You want to go to war? You want a war?
you're gonna get one.
It has been said that anything can happen here in the World Wrestling Federation, but now more than ever, truer words have never been spoken.
Cultural context.
You don't see knives, you don't see guns, you don't see rapes, you don't see anything at all like that that's portrayed in anything that we do.
That's pretty blunt.
It's a very wholesome, family-oriented environment.
WWF wrestling in the 80s and early 90s was largely a reflection of American culture at the time. It had a deceptively sanitized exterior of traditional family values that was masking a grotesque underbelly of steroids, cocaine, and painkillers.
Yeah, that pretty much describes it.
You had the bleached blonde hero Hulk Hogan patriotically leg-dropping America's nefarious foreign adversaries. By the mid-90s, a lot of people in America began to see through the facade, which gave rise to a huge movement of counterculture. All of a sudden, you had the American hero Hulk Hogan dyeing his beard black, smoking cigars, and beating up good guys on WCW.
Yeah.
And people loved it. Vince could see the tide of
NWO
American
was...
culture turning, and he knew that if he wanted to save his
was
empire, he was going to have to get
peak
edgy.
WCW.
What transpired was one of the most awe-inspiring 2 years in the history of American television, with Monday Night Raw and WCW Nitro constantly trying to outdo each other for
Oh my god. Giving Mae Young the 3D. I'm pretty sure that's Mae Young. I don't think it was either I don't know which old lady it was that got the 3D
share of the American TV
through the
audience.
fucking table.
Steve is a dead man walking.
Oh my god. Oh my god, this Pillman bit.
16 meets Pillman.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Imagine if Seinfeld and
Oh the
Friends
god,
were
the
both trying to
Pillman's
put
got a
each other out
gun
of
moment.
business, as members of each cast would constantly swap back and forth between each show. This is what it must have been like to watch professional wrestling during this era. I could list off a compilation of all the outrageous and incredible events that were transpiring between these companies on a weekly basis. But to truly help you grasp the absolute...
I will never get over Sting, like a guy coming in with a Sting mask and taking it off to reveal it's Sting underneath the Sting mask. It's my favorite thing.
madness of this time, I only need to show you one moment from one episode of Monday Night Raw. But before you can truly know the significance of this moment, I've got some explaining to do. First and foremost,
the moment that WCW lost the war.
Every good story needs a good protagonist. So let's talk about Mick Foley.
Oh, yeah. One of my favorites. Genuinely one of my favorites.
Picture a professional wrestler in your head. You probably don't picture a guy like Mick Foley. Mick Foley's pear-shaped physique hardly resembles the tall, chiseled muscle men that are common in the WWF. Mick Foley doesn't have the freakish size, Herculean strength, or Olympic athleticism to draw an audience. The reason wrestling fans watch Mick Foley is to watch him get hurt. By all measures, Mick Foley is simply not talented enough to earn a share of the pro wrestling spotlight. To compensate for this, he sacrifices his own body through some of the most death-defying stunts the WWE...
Oh yeah. In this clip, Foley attempts a risky hangman stunt. Unfortunately, the ring ropes have been drawn extra taut, cutting off his means of escape and placing him at serious risk of asphyxiation. Foley is forced to wedge his head through the ropes to free himself. He loses half of his ear in the process. That's a real thing that happened. It was fucked up.
WWF has ever seen. Perhaps Mick Foley's most iconic moment came in 1998 during the second ever Hell in a Cell match. In this match, Mick Foley is wrestling as Mankind, just one of his 3 different wrestling personas. Mankind,
Cactus Jack, and Dude Love.
Gremlin-like guy who lives in the boiler room beneath the arena. He finishes off his opponents by suffocating them with a dirty sock. And he's completely insane. In this match, Mankind is fighting The Undertaker. The Undertaker is one of the most legendary and recognizable wrestlers of all time. It's difficult to get wrestling fans to agree on anything, but even the most jaded ones will act giddy upon hearing the sound of The Undertaker's iconic dong.
Yeah, nothing sends a chill down your spine quite like The Undertaker.
The popularity of The Undertaker is difficult to describe for anyone who's not a fan of professional wrestling, and I'm not going to try to explain it now, but maybe Justin Wang from the YouTube channel Wang can, since, you know, he kind of looks like The Undertaker.
The Undertaker is hands down the greatest character in the history of WWE. He debuts at a time when Vince is going
He's also got a bunch of lucha masks up there. I think those are the Lucha Bros, I think. Like old Lucha Bros masks?
crazy, throwing
know.
all kinds
Maybe.
of different gimmicks against the wall. Literally shares his first pay-per-view appearance with a guy in a giant turkey costume.
Oh my god, the
But unlike
gobbledygooker.
Garbage Man, who for some reason also wrestles, or the plumber, who for some reason also wrestles, the undead zombie, who for some reason also wrestles, had way more staying power. The Undertaker very quickly becomes a fan favorite and maintains that status for almost 30 years. He continually reinvents himself over the course of those 30 years and eventually becomes the unbeatable final boss of WrestleMania. Except for that time he got beaten. But it's actually kind of a good thing that he got beaten, because to pigeonhole him as the WrestleMania guy minimizes everything else that he's accomplished in his career.
Thanks, Justin. I'm not
Yeah,
gonna get too
pretty
much
much.
into The Undertaker right now because he doesn't really play a role in the Raw moment I'm discussing. But he was involved in Mick Foley's most recognizable moment ever by throwing Mankind off the top of the cell in front of thousands of stunned
god.
spectators. Mick Foley's two.
So yeah, in this bit here, Jim Ross actually thought that they just flat out killed Mick Foley here, which is why he says, "By God Almighty, they killed him." He actually thought that he was just fucking dead here.
280-pound body plummeted from the height of a two-story building and splashed down on the announcer table below. No one had ever seen anything like it. The following shots of Mick Foley show medical personnel surrounding him and lifting his limp body onto a stretcher. At this point, any fan watching would have walked away completely satisfied with the effort that Mick had already put into this one stunt. About 5 minutes later, this happened.
Hell in a cell match. Are you kidding me? He wants to go back up. Mankind is going back up. No way. If he throws him up on the other side, there's...
Terry Funk, watching from the back, I thought he was dead. I ran out there and looked down on him, still lying in the ring where he landed. His eyes weren't rolled back in his head, but it looked totally glazed over, like a dead fish's eyes. Fun fact, he wasn't supposed to go through the roof of the cell like that. He wasn't supposed to do that. He was supposed to just get chokeslammed onto the fence, onto the fencing of the cell. But it gave way from the force of the chokeslam and swung out, and he fell straight through. Yeah. Mick Foley's a real one.
Shortly after this, Mick Foley can be seen,
Yeah.
somehow still conscious, sitting up in the ring corner with his tooth in his nostril. He then wrestled The Undertaker for about 10 more minutes.
He went another 10 minutes after that, by the way.
Where he eventually got chokeslammed onto a pile of thumbtacks.
Oh.
The Undertaker won this match, but Mick Foley, through his superhuman resilience to pain, had won the hearts of the WWF fans. Naturally, this match instantly cemented Mick Foley as a legend in the pro wrestling universe, and as a fan favorite. And even though he won the admiration of the audience, he never quite seemed like a guy who was supposed to win a lot of matches. And most importantly, never did anyone truly believe that Mick Foley could become the WWF champion. So what's the point? of watching big, strong dudes throw each other off the tops of buildings. Well, the goal of both fictional wrestling and legitimate athletic competitions is to find out who is the best in the world. So you have a bunch of wrestlers fight each other, and some of them win more than others. And only then do the winningest wrestlers have an opportunity to fight for the WWF Championship. Becoming the champion is not just the ultimate goal for the characters in the storyline. It is also the ultimate sign
Yeah,
of
Mick
validation for a
Mick Foley was absolutely nutty. Absolute madman. Also really funny. He does like his own comedy tour stuff. And typically whenever they need a Santa Claus in WWE, he always does Santa too.
wrestler's real-life career. The fundamental foundation of every wrestling narrative is watching guys fight to become the champion. Lower tiers of wrestlers will each fight for their own version of a championship. But no title is more coveted and more prestigious than the WWF Heavyweight Championship. Historically, the WWF title has been reserved for only the biggest, most popular attraction in the company. When you become the WWF champion, you become the face of the company.
Yeah.
Usually, the championship only changes hands once, maybe twice a year. So whenever it happens, it's a pretty big deal.
Except during the Attitude Era where they were playing fucking hot potato with that thing.
And on the January 4th, 1999 episode of Raw, Mankind found himself with an opportunity to win the WWF Championship. This is the essence of his hero's journey. But every hero needs a good villain. And the villain of this story just so happens to be the guy Mick Foley is facing for the championship. A man who many of you already know.
Do you smell what The Rock is cooking?
Yep.
Today, The Rock is one of the most recognized Hollywood actors on the planet. Although many people would agree that he makes a much better celebrity than an actor.
Yeah.
Most of The Rock's repertoire today involves acting in high-profile but ultimately forgettable action flicks, and Moana. The Rock's widespread fame today may raise the question of how he got popular in the first place. You see, 20 years ago, The Rock burst onto the pop culture scene as a wrestling god. To this day, no one wrestler has ever been able to hold the audience in the palm of his hand quite like The Rock could. But it wasn't always like that. In fact, when The Rock first debuted in the WWF, he was hated.
Yep.
The Rock didn't start off as the wisecracking, smack-talking, one-liner dropping legend that many of you know him as today.
Yeah, he was a cheesy-ass face.
He was a bland, dopey-looking Samoan called Rocky Maivia, who would stand in the middle of the ring and smile like a goober. This is a character that may have worked 10 years prior, but not during the era of edgy 90s counterculture. WWF fans hated Rocky with a passion, and they would shower him with relentless boos while chanting "Die Rocky Die."
The
Eventually,
Die
it
Rocky
became
Die
clear that
chants,
the only way for
man.
Rocky Maivia to stop getting pushed around by the crowd was to push back. And on one fateful day, The Rock was born.
I got 3 words. Die, Rocky, die. That's the gratitude I get from you pieces of crap.
Over the next 2 years, The Rock would transform into one of the most smarmy villains in the company, becoming such a good heel that, ironically, the audience had no choice but to love him. In 1998, The Rock would align himself with Vince McMahon and the corporation to cheat to win the WWF Championship, commencing his new reign as the corporate champion. In order to become the champion, Mankind would have to go through not just The Rock, but the squad of goons in Vince McMahon's corporate stable.
Oh
The
yeah.
deck seemed
He had to go through the whole
stacked. At least it
corporation
was
just to
until he
get to
got
The
a little
Rock.
help from Triple H.
Oh. D-Generation X.
Triple H may be one of the most interesting wrestlers of all time, not for what he's done inside of the ring, but for what he's done outside of it. Triple H started off as just another no-name wrestler in the mid-90s. He is now one of the top executives in the WWE. His real-life rise to power within the company is most likely due to his marriage with Stephanie McMahon, Vince McMahon's daughter.
Yep. Nowadays, Triple H is not just a chief officer, but also the head of creative now that Vince is gone.
And heir to the WWE throne. I would go more into Triple H, But this video by screenwriter Max Landis explains his career better than I ever could. All you need to know for our story is that Triple H is the leader of a faction called D-Generation X.
Yeah.
If you happen to be working at the Standards and Practices Department for the USA Network from 1997 to 2000, the mere mention of the letters DX will probably give you a PTSD flashback.
Oh, yeah. I can't even imagine how bad they had it.
Seemingly every week, DX would invent new ways to joke about their penises. They spent every moment on screen basically acting as raunchy as possible. They also popularized the crotch chop 10 years before Waluigi did it. One time, the members of DX rode a literal tank to the front door of WCW Nitro just to stick it to their competition.
Yeah, they actually did this on location during an active Nitro event. Shit's nutty.
But if there's one thing Triple H and DX hated more than WCW, it's authority. Hey, wait a minute. Anyway, whenever McMahon's
it's quite ironic.
corporation would attack a defenseless wrestler, DX would seemingly always be there to level the playing field. And that's exactly what happened in Mankind's championship match versus The Rock. We enter a scene of utter chaos, as the audience anxiously waits on pins and needles, anticipating if Mankind can do the unthinkable
Here it comes.
and win the WWF title. And that's
I
when
know
we hear
exactly
the
what's
all-too
coming.
familiar sound. At this moment, the roof of the arena is about to become unhinged from the surprise return of Stone Cold Steve
Oh,
Austin.
I love this whole moment. In order to be loved, beat the
Stone
shit out of
Cold
your
Steve
boss.
Austin may be the most popular wrestler of all time, even more so than Hulk Hogan. But
Yep.
he, like many
Hands
other
down.
wrestlers I've talked about here, came from humble beginnings. Stunning Steve Austin was just an average and forgettable wrestler for WCW in the mid-90s. In 1995,
God, they
WCW
fumbled hard.
unceremoniously fired Austin while he was out of action with an injury. But if things couldn't get bad enough for Steve, this was also the time when he went completely bald. And when a man has lost his hair, he has nothing left to lose. Steve Austin would join the WWF with a vengeance. He cultivated the anger from his WCW firing and adopted it into a stone-cold new persona. Stone Cold Steve Austin became a pissed-off redneck from Texas who would beat up everyone and everything. He was the consummate anti-hero, constantly interrupting
Absolutely.
matches to beat people up for literally no reason. These antics made him popular for sure, but he would only
Oh,
attain
God,
legendary
Austin is
stardom
fantastic.
through his feud with Vince McMahon. Those of you unfamiliar with wrestling may have been confused earlier in this video when I mentioned that The Rock teamed up with Vince McMahon. Why is the owner of the WWF recruiting a stable of bad guys to beat up other wrestlers in his company? Well, unlike most billionaire CEOs, Vince McMahon is deeply passionate about the product he's
Stunner for shit, though, that's for sure.
even past the ripe old age of 70.
Like multiple occasions. Also, generational screenshot right here. Moments before disaster. But yeah, it's like, no matter what, Vince McMahon could not at all sell a stunner to save his life. It was so bad the last time he did one a couple years ago. Granted, he was way up there in age. It was at like a WrestleMania or something, and Stone Cold gave him a stunner for old time's sake. The way he tried to sell it was so god awful that it had Steve Austin literally busting out laughing, trying his damnedest to hold back the laughter. It was so bad and so funny to look at. Oh my god. It's honestly a shame to think about how funny those moments were, because how much of an awful human being Vince McMahon is. Like, if you've read like some of the depositions from the recent lawsuits and stuff, oh my god, he is such a fucking awful human being, and I cannot wait until I can just fucking jam out the moment he fucking finally ascends or descends from this mortal coil. Holy shit.
Vince is still occasionally willing to step in the ring and take a top rope frog splash from a 266-pound fat guy. Back in the 90s, when the WWF was in serious danger of going under, Vince took it upon himself to do whatever was necessary to save his company, going so far as to abandon his casual role as a commentator and quickly transform himself into the most despicable villain in all of wrestling.
Yep. I wonder if he's
Hello,
going to
Peter.
explain how he did
What's
it.
happening? So I was sitting in my cubicle today and I realized ever since I started working, every single day of my life has been worse than the day before it.
Is he going to explain
So
how
that
it
means that every
happened?
single day that you see me, that's on the worst day of my life.
The 90s ushered in a period of sterile corporatization for the American worker. This was a time when most Americans had fallen out of faith with the government, but still...
I guess he's not going to explain exactly how Vince McMahon rose to be the heel that he was. You see, there was an incident referred to colloquially and, well, all over as, well, simply everywhere, really, as the Montreal Screwjob. You see, the Montreal Screwjob was an event that had both in-universe and real-life connotations to it. You see, Bret the Hitman Hart was then WWF champion. However, Vince McMahon had told him that he cannot honor the contract deal that they made together, and therefore would be terminating his contract, and he was free to open negotiations with WCW to join them. So what happened here is, at the time, he was feuding with both on-screen and real-life hated rival Shawn Michaels. He was more than willing to drop the title to Shawn Michaels before leaving for WCW. However, he refused to lose the title in Canada because Bret Hart is a Canadian hero. So he refused to lose the title to someone he actually, in real life, despised in his home country. So, naturally, when they were going to have a show in Canada, he refused to drop the title there. He said he would happily do it on the Monday after. He would vacate the title, or he would drop the title on their first show back in the States. But he would not drop the title in Canada. And what happened, it was in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. Which is why it's called the Montreal Screwjob, of course. So naturally, what happened is Vince McMahon, Shawn Michaels, and after a booking meeting where the idea allegedly came from Jim Cornette, who just after hours of just trying to figure out how they would handle it, just threw his hands up and said, just screw him, just do a screw job. And basically, they worked out a finish where Shawn Michaels would get him for the pin, and a crucifix pin, and the ref, Earl Hebner, would go for the pin, and even though his shoulders weren't down for the 3 count, Vince, who was at ringside, called for the bell and awarded the title to Shawn Michaels, therefore screwing Bret Hart out of the title and out of the win. And it was such a heated incident. Literally, The Undertaker was pissed. He was pissed about it because of what they did to Bret. And it was such a bad incident. Bret knocked Vince the fuck out backstage. He got knocked out. He had a shiner for a week. Or for a while after that. It was that's the moment that Vince turned heel. And then his Bret screwed Bret promo afterwards.
Somewhat trusted their corporate overlords. A time before companies like Enron and the big banks royally screwed up and put the world economy on a downward spiral. A time before the internet transformed the paradigm of what was thought possible for earning a paycheck. Most Americans entering the workforce at this time were left with one option. You would spend all your daylight hours, Monday through Friday, working in a cubicle under oppressive fluorescent lighting. And you were expected to do this week in and week out for 40 years. Naturally, a lot of workers weren't exactly thrilled with this reality. Vince McMahon must have known this because starting in 1998, he transformed himself into the living embodiment of everything Americans hated about their corporate world. And for every ounce of hatred projected on Vince, Americans found an equal amount of catharsis in watching Stone Cold Steve Austin repeatedly beat the piss out of him on national TV.
Beer truck.
The Austin McMahon feud escalated throughout the entire year.
The Miller Lite beer truck.
Mainstream stardom. Steve Austin did on a weekly basis what every layperson in America wishes they could have done to their bosses, teachers, or any other oppressive authority figure that separated them from what they wanted. He represents something universal about the human spirit, the desire to fight back against those who control you, the constant dream of capturing your own slice of agency. Stone Cold Steve Austin is a man who cannot be controlled, because the second you try, he'll blow up your bus, fill your car with cement, and spray you with beer from a fire hose. And most importantly, he'll give the people what they want.
Absolutely perfect moment.
Many wrestling historians like to point to this moment as the loudest crowd reaction in WWE history. I guess ultimately that's the whole point of all of this.
Yeah.
To give people a window into a different world. A world
One of the best moments in WWE history.
Where valiant heroes could overcome seemingly impossible odds, and where despicable villains would always be brought to justice. Eventually. You just had to keep watching to see it happen, and many Americans did, even if it was just for 2 hours a week on a Monday night. Wrestling historians also like to point to this event as the moment where WWF surpassed WCW once and for all as the premier wrestling company in America.
Yep.
Over on TNT.
And it was fucking WCW's own doing too.
The Nitro commentators intentionally spoiled the ending of that night's Raw ahead of time.
If you're thinking about changing the channel to our competition, fans do not. Because we understand that Mick Foley, who wrestled here one time as Cactus Jack, is going to win their world title.
This decision backfired spectacularly, as 600,000 Nitro viewers immediately changed the channel to Raw to witness one of the greatest moments in professional wrestling history. Conversely, those who kept watching Nitro that night got to witness one of the most anticlimactic
the finger poke of doom.
As the despicable villain Hollywood Hogan reclaimed the WCW championship after his so-called opponent Kevin Nash literally laid down and gave it to him. 2 years later, WCW would go out of business, and Vince would finally achieve his goal of conquering the last major American wrestling promotion by acquiring WCW for pennies on the dollar. Right after the WCW commentators spoiled the end of Raw that night, Tony Schiavone infamously mocked the idea of Mankind winning the WWF title by sarcastically commenting,
Gonna put some butts in the seat.
Technically, he was correct in his snide assessment. Because no one was sitting down in the Centrum Center as the referee counted to 3 on Mankind's first ever championship victory. Monday Night Raw is still on the air today. WWE and wrestling as a whole have largely diminished in popularity since this time. It's a
unfortunate, but
what's different in the ring,
it's
but
just
rather how the world has changed around it.
it's just a change of the climate. Not as many people are into wrestling anymore.
And for this reason, WWE may never again be able to replicate a moment of this spectacle, but nothing else on TV really could either. The pure hype of the crowd surrounding the ring that night is something truly unique about professional wrestling. There's a visceral, palpitating feeling of unbridled excitement that permeates through whatever screen you're watching it on, even 20 years later. The cascading wave of emotion on display here is, quite simply, raw. And you'd be hard-pressed to replicate something like this with any other TV show. Not bad for something that's not even real.
Yeah. Not bad at all for something that's not real in the slightest.
This is the end of just another episode of Monday Night Raw. There are more than 1,300 other episodes like it and counting. So if you find yourself bored on a Monday night flipping through channels on TV, and you happen to catch a glimpse of a bunch of weird-looking muscle men brawling on the USA Network, you...
Well, now not even anymore, because Raw's on Netflix now. Such a weird time to live in.
You can stop and appreciate it, because there will never ever be another TV show like it.
Yeah.
Oh my God, no! Mankind did it! Nick Foley did it! No! Stone Cold did it! Mankind has achieved his dream! The dream of everyone else who's been told you can't do it! No! You can't do it!
Is it gonna end with his speech?
My God! Anything
No.
can happen in the WWF!
Yes, it can. And that was Monday Night Raw. I miss wrestling. I used to be super into it, but I just haven't watched it at all these days. Maybe I will someday, who knows? But I'd love to just give my own 2 cents into it and just kind of be yapping. But yeah, wrestling in general is just a fantastic, fun little escapade of theater and escapism. Let me know down in the comments below what your favorite wrestling moment is. Do you prefer WWE, WCW, TNA, New Japan? Are you one of those people that are used to like a TNA Impact diehard? Let me know down in the comments below. Just let me know. Like, what's your favorite wrestling moment? Do you like any of that stuff? Whatever the promotion is, just let me know what your favorite wrestling moment is down in the comments below. And of course, don't forget to hit like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and ding that bell, because it'll tell you when I upload, and it helps me out in the algorithm. And as always, I will see you next time at the HQ. Bye-bye.